Welcome to the Under Center podcast, and you see a familiar face along with Josh Schrock, our Bears reporter, and myself. That's, of course, the former host of Under Center. And as we wind down this show, as it moves to perhaps another iteration, it's great to bring on writer for Colts.com, PA announcing everything Colts. All right, he's leveled up, people. This is what he does. He levels up. We're bringing in JJ Stankevitz. Follow him at JJ Stankevitz. Great writer and a great person. And JJ, thank you for coming on and welcome back to the show.
Y'all still sponsored by the Sprinkler Fitters?
Nope. Actually, there's no sponsor right now, JJ. Our sponsorship ran out like a couple months ago.
Can I do a little bit then?
Yeah, go ahead, sir. The floor is yours.
Are we recording this right now?
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, great. So, here's my bit. I texted this to Cam Ellis yesterday when I got the link to come on. Remember, fire sprinklers don't work without water. Get your building's fire pump tested ASAP. Go to sprinklerfitterchicago.org or call 708-597-1800. Sprinkler Fitter is Union Local 281, protecting Chicagoland for over 100 years. Your boy still got it. Still got it.
Man. That was awesome.
Look at him. The professional.
That was way better than an Anthony Richardson pass. Sorry.
I'll be on my deathbed, and like memories will be flooding back, and one of them will be that ad read that I had to do for 3 years of my life, twice a week. It was great. I loved it. I missed the Sprinkler Fitters.
What a read, you know. They don't work without water. Who would have known?
Remember. Fire sprinklers don't work without water.
They're just hose.
Someone's got the sprinklers. And they're like, why won't these work? And it's like, we don't have water.
Well, you get your building fire tested ASAP.
Real quick, I can say this from being in grammar school. I was always fearful of the painted over fire sprinklers and still wondered, was there water in them? Because I had never seen them actually come on. So in all fairness, fire sprinklers do need water. It seems common sense, but I swear I don't think those fire sprinklers had water, or at least the water would not be coming out of said fire sprinklers.
The moment that they need water, they better have water in them. Otherwise, it is not going to be a good day for you.
All right, let's get down to the football field, guys. And listen, JJ, we got to get your opinion on what's happening with the Bears. It's some of the same old stuff, and particularly when we're talking about the offensive line, but even just as a kind of 3,000-foot view, the Bears are 1-1. The defense looks extremely well, and you've been here through some great Bears defenses. The offense has better parts, JJ, than they had in the past, but a lot of the same issues has been the offensive line. Your thoughts from the outside looking in on the Bears' performance so far at the beginning of this NFL season?
Yeah, I caught maybe the second half of the Texans game, and that defense looks like they're really tuned up, right? Like they're playing 11-1. The secondary I thought was pretty impressive. That Houston passing attack is awfully good. Like Nico Collins is going to get his in every single game. I think they've got something to him on defense. Absolutely. It seems like adding Montez Sweat last season really impacted how they can rush. They're doing, this is kind of how Matt Eberflus has built. Like when he was in Indy, that fourth year that he was here, he did some funky stuff, mixed up his coverages really well. They brought some really interesting blitz packages once the Colts got into year 3, year 4 under him. And I think you're kind of seeing it with the Bears right now. It's going to be a challenge for the Colts, absolutely, against a defense that really is playing what to me looks like a lot of sound football.
JJ, as someone who's covering a quarterback who's basically in his rookie year with Anthony Richardson after the injury last year, what's been your kind of evaluation of Caleb through 2 games? It's been shaky, but as we noted, like he has pretty much no time, about 70% of the snaps.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be a problem for any quarterback, let alone a rookie, where you're trying to develop chemistry with your receivers, but you don't have time. Some of those, again, I'm watching the TV copy, and some of those deep balls to DJ Moore looked like if they just had a little bit more of a connection, maybe a little bit more time, those are going to be completions. Those are going to be 30 yards. Those are going to be incredible plays. I have to believe Caleb's going to get there. Everyone who I talked to, obviously the Colts were not in the market to draft a quarterback this year, but everyone I talked to around the building here, was like, yeah, he's head and shoulders above the rest, in terms of where he ranks among the quarterbacks this year. So you got to think he's going to figure it out. He's a really talented kid. He's got a really good feel for the game. It's going to come at some point, but it might be a little bit shaky to start. Look, CJ Stroud last year, he didn't take off until week 6 or 7, where you saw some signs, but he didn't really become like CJ Stroud until 6-7 games into his rookie year.
JJ, you have been a lot closer than what Flus was, kind of to what he's had to go back to with taking over the defensive side of the ball. And a lot of times he gets dinged, and sometimes rightfully so. But I want to focus on being a defensive coordinator now that he's kind of the de facto defensive coordinator. No knock on Eric Washington, but since Flus calls the plays, when you're ranking in tiers as far as successful defensive coordinators within in the NFL, where would you have placed Flus prior to him coming a head coach in NFL football?
I think I put him in the top 10. I mean, you look at what the Colts did over the course of his tenure and some of the development you saw from players, right? Like Shaquille Leonard, when he was kind of on that ascent, the guy was one of the most incredible football players I've ever seen with his ability to take the ball away. And, he developed guys like Kenny Moore II into being one of the best slot cornerbacks in the NFL. He's a really good teacher of football. And then I think his scheme, while it may not be, you're not getting the Brian Flores, you don't know who's blitzing, sim pressure, stuff like that. You're just getting like fundamentally sound football out of Matt Eberflus. And if you pair that with a pass rush that can get after a quarterback, that's going to be a really hard defense to play every single week. So I'd probably put him in the top 10, especially when he's got the guys. And it looks like, I was really impressed by Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker watching that game on Sunday. Like, it looks like he's got guys in important positions for this team. Dexter looks really good. That 3 technique spot's always so important. The slot corner is so important. Will linebacker is so important. It looks like he's got guys in those positions that he can really build around, and it looks like that defense should be pretty good this year.
Real quick.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Josh. You mentioned that for perhaps him being fundamental, and you talked about Brian Flores, and we all know that how exotic blitzer that Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator for the Vikings, can be. Are there any other knocks perhaps Flus had as defensive coordinator for the Colts that us here know because he came in as a head coach?
Sorry, repeat that. You broke up a little bit there, Ken.
Yeah, your hotspot's glitching.
I'm sorry. I was saying, were there any other? It's glitching. Were there any knocks that he's had outside of just being fundamentally sound and not being exotic in the past?
Yeah, I mean, if you like someone who's going to blitz more, Matt Eberflus not really your guy there. But I always thought he had like a really good knack for when to send pressure. Like this one play is just seared in my brain. It was 2021 against the Titans. Colts are up 14-0. They've got a 3rd and long, and the pressure the Colts sent was they had the linebacker mugged up. He drops out. Shaq Leonard drops out. Then you had George Odom, the safety, blitzing off the edge. But in addition to that, Tyquan Lewis, the defensive lineman, dropped into coverage. Ryan Tannehill threw the ball right to him. Now this game completely turned on this play because Tyquan caught the pass, started running with it, his first career interception. Unfortunately, he ruptured his patella tendon on the play. It's not funny. It's like the world's worst turn of events. Ruptured his patella tendon on the play, fumbled, lost the ball. Tennessee on the next play threw a 59-yard touchdown, got back and won the game. But it's like stuff like that. He's just got like a really good feel for it that I think benefits whatever defense, especially now that he's calling the plays in Chicago, I think really benefits whatever defense he's with.
Speaking of defense, let's get to the movable object versus the stoppable force, the Bears run game against the Colts run defense. Colts, I mean, they get gashed by Joe Mixon. They show up in Green Bay. Everyone knows that Malik Willis is probably not going to do a whole lot of throwing, and they gave up, 237 in the first half. What's going on with the Colts run defense right now? How much of it is a scheme thing with Gus Bradley in the cover 3? How much of it is just gap discipline? What are we working with?
Yes. I think you're probably looking at both. I think Gus Bradley's going to have to figure out the way to fix it from a schematic standpoint, and the guys up front are going to have to figure out a way to fix it where they're not getting, blown off the ball like we've seen a little bit. Those first 3 drives against Green Bay, Josh, were really where you saw the Packers have a lot of success. They averaged 6.7 yards per play on those 3 drives. The only reason why they didn't go up 17-0 was because Zaire Franklin knocked the ball out of Josh Jacobs' hand 1 yard from the goal line, 1 yard from a touchdown. And after that, the Colts defense did rebound. They were able to hold Green Bay for the next 6 drives, the final 7 drives of the game, to just 2.4 rushing yards per carry. So it looked like they maybe were starting to play a little more base to 11. And Grover Stewart really took that game over on the interior. He's still a premier run defender in the NFL. You saw guys like Dayo Odangbo have a really good game once you kind of got through there. The Colts they can't have that. They can't have the first 3 drives happen again. And it's going to take everyone on that side of the ball, from coaches to players, to fix it. Because you're right, like, teams are now going to look at this Colts defense and say, we are going to run the ball until they show that they can stop it. The Colts know that. EJ Speed was telling us yesterday, like, the reality is it's a problem, and we have to accept that it is a problem. And once you accept it, then you can start fixing it. But it's going to be on everyone on that side of the ball, because if you're Shane Waldron and you're looking at this, you're going to go, all right, well, DeAndre Swift, like, you're up. You're getting the ball as much as we can possibly give it to you. And then when you get tired, guess what? Khalil Herbert's coming in. Like, that's going to be the game plan that every single team is going to have against the Colts until they show they can stop it.
It's funny because on our last episode, we talked about, Josh especially mentioned, of course, the NFL being a copycat league. And what we're saying right here, that the Bears can actually run on the Colts, which that's definitely a wait and see kind of approach. I would want to know, though, with how the Bears were stifled with blitzing with a young quarterback and an offensive line that's porous at this moment, do the Colts have the capabilities to stop the Bears by using what you've seen the first two games with Tennessee and what the Texans did, as far as kind of disrupting and take advantage of the fact that the Bears offensive line isn't cohesive just yet?
Yeah, I mean, that was what this defense was built on, was getting after the passer, hitting home with 4. The Colts invested heavily in their defensive line. They drafted Laiatu Latu with the 15th overall pick. You re-signed Tyquan Lewis. You re-signed Grover Stewart. You signed DeForest Buckner to an extension. You picked up Kwity Paye's 5th-year option. This D-line's got a lot of dudes in it. Now, we'll see if Buckner plays. He's got a sprained ankle. We'll see if Latu plays. He's got a hip. Samson Ebukam, that was a disappointment going back to training camp. He tore his Achilles 3 days into training camp. So that bit of a bummer on the end there. But that's what this Colts defense has to do. They've got to get into situations where their pass rush can get after quarterbacks with 4, where they don't have to send pressure. That's not something Gus Bradley is keen on doing. That's been the case his whole career. But the Colts haven't been in position where their pass rush can get home because they've been getting gashed on the ground. So the Colts, first, you got to stop the run. And then I think you get into more of these 3rd and 7 looks. That's when you're going to see the pass rush start to take over. You saw it a little bit against Houston when they got into 3rd and 7 looks. The Colts did get a good amount of pressure on CJ Stroud on some of those 3rd and longs, but they weren't in them enough to make it a game-changing impact.
As far as the Colts pass defense goes, where do the Bears need to attack it? I mean, Caleb through 2 weeks is 3 for 14 for 52 yards on throws past 10 yards. It's not been very good. I mean, how can they exploit? Is there any weakness to exploit?
The Colts are depleted in the secondary. Juju Brents went on injured reserve last week with a knee. He was kind of the guy who was earmarked to be, okay, this is your top outside corner this year. So now you're without him. You got Jalen Jones on one side. And if the Colts play nickel to 11, which I would assume, I mean, they didn't do it. They did it a little bit last week where they played base to 11 against Green Bay. I think that was probably more game plan specific against a Packers offense that was going to run the ball. So you're going to have Kenny Moore in the slot, and he's really good there. You're going to have Jalen Jones at one outside corner position. And then last week against Green Bay, when the Colts were in nickel, they rotated Dallas Flowers, Oak Park River Forest Zone, shout out to the Huskies, and Samuel Womack, who was picked up off waivers. They rotated those guys at the outside corner positions. So if there's a weakness there, I'm not so sure that it's the deep ball, because the Colts the Colts did a generally good job kind of keeping a lid on Houston's deep passing offense in week 1, but they did get beat on quite a few intermediate throws. And that's where, if you're the Bears offense, can Caleb stand in the pocket, have time to rip a 15-yard dig or something? That might be where you see a weakness, but he's got to have the time to do it. And again, that goes into, can the Colts pass rush get home? Because that's how this team was built. The Colts did not invest heavily in their defensive secondary. They re-signed Kenny Moore II. They re-signed Julian Blackmon at safety. But otherwise, they didn't make another move at corner. They kept the same guys they had last year in Jones, Flowers, and Brents. And the goal was, if we can get home with our pass rush, that'll take the pressure off those guys. They can develop in the back end. The Colts just need to be in more positions where their pass rush can get home.
Josh, do you have any more questions about the defense of the Colts?
Nope.
JJ, let me ask you this. Josh kind of mentioned it. You got a young quarterback. He didn't play a lot in college, and then he got injured last year. What are the keys to kind of getting Anthony Richardson out of his game so early in his career?
I mean, it's kind of this week-to-week thing with Anthony Richardson where, the Colts know this is going to be – they're going to be ups and downs. He's made 6 starts since college, 19 starts since high school. They're going to be up and downs. But the talent that he possesses is so rare that you can live with some of the downs because some of the ups, like, my goodness, like, go watch the throw he had to Alec Pierce in week 1.
It's crazy.
It's
crazy.
Insane. Like an insane throw that he can do that. And he had a couple other throws in that game too. Another deep ball to Alec. He threw a dart to Ashton Doolin that led to a 54-yard touchdown. Even against Green Bay, when things are not going well at all for your offense, he threw this awesome ball down the sideline to Adonai Mitchell for a 30-yard completion that kind of sparked a late scoring drive. He's got that in him. And the thing with Richardson that you have to account for is over 60 minutes, he can play poorly for 58, and then the other 2 could win the Colts the game. So there's not a single game the Colts are ever out of with Anthony Richardson at quarterback. I'm not sure what the way to slow him down is, because it's going to vary game to game. Like, is he not on time with his receivers? Is he spraying some throws? Is he making poor decisions? Or is he ripping it 60 yards downfield and you can't do anything to stop it? It's going to be kind of this like grab bag of what you get out of him this season. But ultimately, the talent is so high for him that I think the ultimate result of this whole thing is going to be the Colts are going to come out of this year with a pretty good offense because of Anthony Richardson at quarterback.
Speaking of the offense, the Colts have one of the best play callers, I think, in my opinion, in the NFL, and Shane Steichen. I think he's brilliant. How have you seen him try to make life easier for Richardson? Like, we're still working through Shane Waldron, trying to let Caleb get comfy. How have you seen Shane Steichen at the controls kind of work his magic with Richardson that way?
I mean, it's kind of what you would expect if you watched what Philly did when Shane was there. Is the Colts are the second highest RPO rate in the NFL entering week 3. So you're going to get, 1 of every 5 plays right now is an RPO for the Colts. So, you kind of have an easy button there. I think as this season progresses, you're going to see the Colts start developing some sort of an identity where right now it does kind of feel like it's bombs away or Richardson takes off. If Josh Downs is back this week, the slot receiver, that I think is going to be a big help for making things easier on Anthony Richardson. He's still working through developing chemistry with Adonai Mitchell, with Michael Pittman Jr., with his tight ends. There's a little bit there that still needs to develop from a play calling standpoint of just like, hey, how can we get these guys in the best positions? But it's still early. You're 2 games in. I think really the first 4 games of any season are sort of like your extended training camp, your extended preseason. So maybe it's a good time for the Bears to catch the Colts and that they're still working through some of these things. But I think the flip side, it's probably a good time for the Colts to catch the Bears as Shane Waldron and Caleb Williams are working through those things.
What's the balance with Shane Steichen and even Anthony Richardson? You don't want to stifle him, but as you just mentioned, he's only played 19 games since high school, and you can't have another year where he gets hurt because he's so dynamic. Like, of course you want him to run because that's one of his supreme talents, but you don't want to lose time and losses because he's one of your key players out on the field. How have they said, if they have, they want to kind of balance him and not necessarily have him taken off as much, if they have said that, JJ?
Yeah, I mean, it was a constant conversation during training camp about, how do you use Anthony Richardson's superpower of his ability to run with the football, but not do it in a way that puts him at risk. And I think that the thing there is Anthony has done a much better job understanding, all right, now it's time for me to slide. Now it's time for me to get out of bounds. Or if you look at that game against Houston, Colts had a 4th and goal from the 4-yard line. They needed a touchdown to stay in the game. That's when Anthony Richardson lowered his shoulder into a defender and carried him into the end zone. those are the situations where, all right, now's the time for you to get physical. But otherwise, look, if you're on the edge on 2nd and 10 and there's nothing there, just get down, live to play another play. And I think he's really learned that. He's grown within that, where his decision-making with the ball in his hands this year, I think, has been smart so far.
JJ, knowing Matt Eberflus like you do, having covered him, how do you expect him to try to fluster and confuse a young quarterback? Like if you were him, what's the best way to kind of make life hard for Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, it probably starts with trying to take away the deep shots, just like Green Bay did in week 2, where, all right, we're not going to let Alec Pierce beat us downfield. We're going to make him operate from the pocket, and we're going to try to take away those shot plays. But the thing that I think for the Bears, that I think the Colts are going to get into this as the season goes on. Jonathan Taylor had a really good game against Green Bay, 12 carries, 103 yards. He also caught a couple passes for 34 yards. If the Colts can get that run game going and they get Jonathan Taylor ripping off 10-yard chunks, 12-yard chunks, that's when the play action game for the Colts becomes so deadly. We saw it on one play against Green Bay where Jonathan Taylor had a couple of runs, Colts hit a play action, they pop it to Mo Cox for 22 yards. So if you're Matt Eberflus, is there a way that you can sell out to stop the run while still keeping a shell on this passing offense downfield, and then force the Colts to kind of operate within those confines? That's going to be an interesting question I have going into this game. But stopping Jonathan Taylor, easier said than done. The Colts' run blocking has been really good this year. The offensive line in general has been really good. The interior of it, especially Quentin Nelson, has, I think he's got the highest Pro Football Focus pass block grade of any guard. Will Fries at right guard's been awesome this year. So it's easier said than done against this Colts offense to stop the run and then keep a lid on the passing attack.
You heard us while you discuss offensive line and how stout an offensive line that the Colts have, because we haven't seen that. And knowing you were coming on the show, I want to go back to like 2019 with the Bears, JJ. I believe this was the season where the Bears had 5 different offensive linemen in and out towards the last 7 to 8 games of the year. And I'm not a sky is rosy type of person, and I'm not a sky is falling type of person. But when we were having a discussion, Josh and I was kind of saying it's still early in the year. And even if we have questions about the offensive line, we have seen it in the past where it is one unit that can become extraordinarily cohesive throughout the season compared to some other units. And maybe if you can kind of give us some elements on reporting back then, how that unit kind of fell apart, but then was able to come back together. So the Bears, I believe they finished 8-8 that year with Matt Nagy, and it looked like it was a good year. But if you were a fan, it was much harder contextually.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the specifics of it. I also missed the last 4 games of that season because my kids are born. So, like, I remember watching the Dallas game on Thursday night from Lurie's, where, we're waiting for my wife to deliver our twins. So, I don't have a specific memory of that line, really coming together. That offense was broken the whole year. That's what it was. It felt like whether it was the line, whether it was the quarterback, whether it was the receivers, the tight ends, whatever it may be, that whole offense was pretty broken that year. But what I will say is that, you absolutely can grow as an offensive line. As the season goes on, the Bears have, some talented guys in there. Darnell Wright's a really good player. I think I was surprised to see how many pressures he gave up in week 2. Also, he's going against Danielle Hunter, who's going to get those against the best left tackle, best right tackle in the NFL. So I wouldn't hit the panic button just yet, because that line the line was pretty good last year, right? They were at least good enough.
Running
right?
the ball,
Yeah.
they were really good running the ball.
So
yeah,
if you got the guys in the room, same old line coaches back, I wouldn't hit the panic button on that just yet. Just, it's easy for me to say where I'm not watching it every play. I'm not watching Caleb Williams get destroyed in the pocket, but I wouldn't hit the panic button on an offensive line that was good the year prior in week 2.
All right, it's prediction time. JJ, what happens Sunday?
I don't know. I think the Colts are in a position where, okay, their backs are against the walls a little bit now. Houston and Green Bay, 2 good opponents, but you really feel like you should have won one of those games, if not both of them. I think this team is going to come out with a lot of focus this week. I think you're going to see this, like, everyone's pride has been challenged, like, especially on defense. And this is a group of veteran players who have a lot of pride and have a lot of success in the NFL. I think that side of the ball figures it out. I think that this week whatever it might be, like, we keep here, like, run defense is a mentality. It's mostly a mentality like, all right, well, it's time for that mentality to show up. I think it will. I think guys like Zaire Franklin get that group ready to go. And then on offense, I mean, look, for all the issues the Colts had against Green Bay, if you look at what they've done over 2 games, they are 5th in the NFL in conversion percentage. So that's turning any play into a first down or touchdown. They're at about 32.3%. They're right up there with San Francisco, Buffalo, Arizona, like the best offenses in the NFL. New Orleans is on like their own planet. Somehow. Shout out Clint Kubiak. But the Colts are right where you want to be in terms of you have the ball, you turn it into a first down or a touchdown, and that goes to the team's explosiveness. I think this week is, it's a tough defense, might be not as pretty of a game, but I do think it's a game the Colts are going to come out and win. Now, granted, haven't seen him practice this week, don't know what the injury report looks like, but I just think the mentality of this team, I've seen it enough under Shane Steichen that when this team does kind of get backed into a corner, they do come out with some fire and some focus and some energy, and I think this will be one of those games.
My last question, JJ, how do you expect the AFC South to shake out by the end of the season?
Well, Houston's got quite an advantage already, don't they?
Yes.
I mean, I think ultimately, I think you'll see the Colts be competitive within the division, but Houston's just a really freaking good football team. They do not have many holes on that roster. CJ Stroud is a top 6 or 7 quarterback in the NFL already. Their head coach does a fantastic job, DeMeco Ryans. Their both sides of the line look really good. Their secondary is good. Their weapons are good. Houston looks like a team that could make a real run in the AFC, not just in the AFC South. So I would say, it's early. A lot can still happen. Houston's probably in the driver's seat to win the division, but I wouldn't count the Colts out from making a little bit of noise, even though the start of the season has not been what the team wanted.
JJ Stankevitz, we always thank you and appreciate you, man, and you have a great one.
Man, I just also want to say, shout out to you guys for all the work you did on Under Center. Ken, you and I did a bunch of podcasts together. Josh, you came in a little bit later after I was let go, but it's awesome seeing the podcast still going. I hope this thing continues for y'all because you do a good job. And one other shout out, we got to give it up for Cam Ellis.
I was going to.
He did on the podcast. My guy, yes. My former co-host. I would be remiss going on Under Center if I didn't say, man, what a blast I had doing that podcast with him and Lawrence Holmes. Football Boat, great bit that we had way back in the day. So shout out to anyone who's used to listen to me on this podcast. I really appreciate you, and shout out to you guys for keeping it going, and I hope it continues come October.
A wonderful person, and I'm not just saying that because he's on the show. I could name plenty of times, but I won't. But he knows he's wonderful, and we appreciate you, Cam, Lawrence, Cap, because it wouldn't be here without you all. If a car is already tuned up properly, and they're like, "Here, take these keys," just don't crash it, basically. And
that's all Tony Gill. That's all Tony Gill. Tony Gill took a real tough situation in January 2021. He looked at some squirrels to calm himself down, and then he handed the reins over, and it's been fantastic ever since.
Thank you, man. We appreciate you, and we just want you to be safe out there. And everybody, regardless, make sure you still follow Under Center. Whoever's the host, whatever goes on, keep supporting Under Center because the people are still going to be good people. Definitely believe me. I'm sure it will happen. Thank you, JJ. We appreciate you, man.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Congrats, you finished the video. If you want to build on that success, download the NBC Sports Chicago app. It's got highlights, exclusive insights, and push alerts tailored to you. Everything you need to be a real Chicago sports fan. Download it now.